Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more.
Roy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We've really set up a big goal of recording every contemporary artist that we possibly can for posterity. It's a lesson learned when Mark St. Pierre passed away. My wife and I saw him at a party with Nicole. We were going to go over to speak with them, Merry Christmas, so on and so forth, and asked the both of them to come on a show, and something came up, and we had to leave, and then in less than 24 hours, we found out about his death. So it's a very, very, very important thing, and this has been stimulated by a lot of reasons. You can read it on the website, but one of the reasons is remember the abstract painters film. I forgot the name of the guy who did the film. I posted it a couple of weeks back. It showed all the abstract painters sitting on ladders. I always thought that was kind of bizarre. But what's kind of cool, though, was that you got to see your heroes. You know, if you saw Mark Rothko, and a lot of people, when they look at a Rothko, they become very moved emotionally. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's really nothing to look at, I mean, from a layman's standpoint, So, but to hear him speak and so on and so forth. So I really, really think that that's important. And I tell you, I would love to have recordings of my instructors. I mean, they're in my head, but I would love to have had them, So the first thing we've never met except for like now officially. And I detected a bit of an accent.
It's funny that people say that. I don't mean to go into a long story, but
Go right ahead. I mean, we've got the time for it.
I was born in Jamaica, Montego Bay, Jamaica, and when I first came here, like when I was around, am I speaking loud enough?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
I came here, because I had polio when I was around 7 or so, because I didn't get my vaccination anyway. So I had to come to the United States for better health care. And so when I first came here, being a little kid, I had a strong patois accent. And, it was my first introduction into the United States and what it's like up here, because I've only heard stories. And anyway, long story short, whenever you move to a different country that young, you kind of you get acclimated to the environment, and you kind of lose your accent. So, I lost my accent, and I grew up in Ellington, Connecticut, and so I picked up that. And then when I went away to college, I went to Salve, down in Newport, and
Right.
Down there, there's a lot of there's the Narragansett, there's the Cranston accent, there's the Warwick accent.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of different accents, and they speak differently. And then when I went to Salve and I went back home, everybody's like, "Wow, you sound like a Boston whatever." You're picking up all those type of accents.
Right.
So it's funny that you're saying that. I don't notice anything. And the other thing too is when I was adopted when I was young, and so I didn't really spend too much time with my biological family, who were all Jamaicans, and they speak extremely thick patois. And when I got to about 18, I started visiting my uncle and started spending more time with them, and it took me a little while to get to understand them sometimes. When I went to visit them, but I eventually started picking it up. And my mom, when I speak about my mom, I talk about my adopted mom.
I understand. Yeah.
She's interesting too, because she's a Southern Belle, or whatever you want to call it. And so when she gets on the phone with her relatives, her strong Southern accent comes out. And it's funny when I speak to my, biological family, they say some of my Jamaican accent comes out. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because a very similar thing. A lot of people ask me if I'm from New York now. The weird thing is after my parents split, my mother took off with me to New York, where we lived with her uncle, and that affected me for the rest of my life because he was a crazy man when it came down to art and culture. So he inoculated me, in the arts basically,
Okay.
and say, well, where, you're from New York, right? And I'm like, no, no. It's weird because you would think that the Boston accent would probably trump that, but it doesn't happen. The other thing about Jamaica, my wife's family, one branch of her family comes from there, and she was telling me about jerk pork. She says, which is way better than jerk chicken. So if you've got a recipe, please send it to me. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm gonna.
yeah. I love jerk pork. Jerk chicken is great too, but when we went to Jamaica a couple years ago, no, I hadn't had it in a while, and we had it at this place. I'm like, oh my god, it's so good. Uh,
It's
my
it,
sister, my sister left me some jerk seasoning, and I still can't make it myself. I mean, I love cooking, but
right.
I always go to my aunt's place to get some good Jamaican food.
Yeah. So you've now from Ellington, Connecticut. I the first thought in my head was that, oh my God, any accent would have been wiped clean over there.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's the beige state.
yeah, yeah.
And I have Connecticut relatives who are probably going to hear this and they're going to get on my case. But
Yeah, Ellington is. I loved Ellington. It was growing up in Ellington. It was a small farm cow town that was settled by I think Swedish or I forget what kind of farmers, but very
call them Scandinavian and cover all the
yeah,
bases.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Eh,
But they it's just a beautiful town. It's changed over the years now. A lot of the farms have been sold, and it's built up with houses and big houses because a lot of people from Hartford moved out to the suburbs, and but it was great. I loved Arlington. It's funny because I knew I was home whenever I smelled cow manure. Driving through the town, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, that's so gross." But
no, my father is an old farm boy. He used to go, yeah, take a deep breath and say, "Smell that fresh country air," because his side of the family is from Quebec. The family had a farm up there for up until just recently up in Quebec, which is way up on the Gaspé, almost it's 2/3 of the way up the Gaspé. So I can relate to that right away when you said. um, One of the things I always do, and it's always a hit and miss, is I ask people to their name, and I ask them to say their name and then spell it because there's always generally 90% of the time, I don't know what my percentage is now, but 90% of the time I feel that there's always a story in there. Okay.
yeah. So it's my full name is Roy Saint Christopher Rosso. Um,
There's got
originally,
to be a story with St. Christopher.
yeah. Originally it was Roy. I think Roy Christopher Turner. Then when I was adopted, my mom added Saint. Um, I don't know what her story was, why she added it, but um, the last name Rosso is German, so that's pretty much it.
Or I thought probably it was a bastardization of the French Rousseau because just living in this area with the Huguenots, a lot of people don't think of Huguenots when they think of the founding fathers, whaling and such. The Bullard were Bullard, Crapos, Capo, it goes on. Roche is Roche, so I just thought there was something in there.
Well, the interesting about Rosso is it comes from my dad's. I know he's a big German guy. Grew up on burgers and um, kielbasa and cooking outside and stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when I just got out of college, because I studied graphic design at the same time, and so I wanted to do like a kind of pseudo company thing. So, I always loved skateboarding. I love the exports and all that stuff. And so I made this like Rosso clothing company, skateboarding company. So I designed, I not only just designed all the collateral material, all the stickers, t-shirts, and I actually made some decks and everything. I made the graphics for the decks and I sent it out to get printed. Anyway, so I posted online and I was trying to sell some of the t-shirts, and I had a guy from the Midwest email me because he was so proud that he saw the Rosso name on a t-shirt. And, he was a Rosso too. I don't know how he was related to us, but yeah, I always thought that was kind of cool. I think a lot of the Rossos settled in the Midwest type area.
Right.
I thought that was kind of cool.
No, it is, because people around here. There's a Norman Fortier who was considered the foremost marine photographer in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And everybody always asks me, are you related to Norman? And yeah, he's my cousin 9 times removed. He came from the batch of 20 children, the 20 children from the common ancestor that we share. And then they ask are you related to this one? Are you related to that one? And it's like, well, I know it sounds like a bad Southern license plate slogan. We're all related. It's all because of those, the father and son that came over. So yeah, and it's funny too, how family pride in your name, how important that is. Now your biological parents' family name was Christopher. Okay, all right. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. All right. When did you get bitten by the bug? When did you know that you wanted to be an artist? That's we all have that story, that moment of revelation.
It's just, I guess it's just been a progressive thing. And I remember when I lived in Jamaica, my parents, they left me and my sister. I had one biological sister. They left. I think this was a practice among a lot of Caribbean families. I'm not positive, but I've heard it from other people, the same kind of story that I lived.
That's a story like that in her family as well.
Where the parents would leave the kids with a family relatives, come to the United States to get a home and get acclimated and whatnot, and then they would send for the kids.
Yeah.
So me and my sister lived with my grandmother, and it was during that time that I got sick. But my grandma used to work at Woolworth, and she would bring home comics she'd always bring me a lot of comics. And that's when I would just love the drawings. I didn't really read them too much, but I just loved the imagery, and I loved the drawings, and I loved Spider-Man and whatnot. And I even collected the Archie comics. And so that was my first, wow, I love these artwork. And then I just kind of, just kept going. And when I came to the United States and all this stuff, and I always loved cartoons. I just love animation and whatnot. Then when I came to the United States, I used to just doodle all the time. I used to just sketch and draw and just whatever I could come out of my head and just draw. And then my mom noticed this, so she got me a private tutor, art tutor. Her name was Miss Kudodama. And she would come in and just work with me for a couple hours a day. And it just kept going. And, as I got into high school, in junior high, then high school, I just always kept drawing. Then I loved playing around with models. I used to build models and stuff. So I was always doing stuff, I was just a creative person. And I think it was in high school, it got a little bit more serious for me. I did some watercolors, didn't really play around too much with oils, but I just kept drawing, and I did some ink drawings, and I actually went to University of Hartford. They had a portfolio prep day or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I started seeing people and seeing, I remember going to the Wadsworth Athenaeum with my mom.
Oh.
long time ago. I think this was pre-college. And I don't remember the artist, but I remember they had a show. I can't remember who it was, but I do remember there was a painting that had a red cloak in it, and I'd never seen a red so painted beautifully. So fabric just, I didn't know how to paint fabric. I didn't know anything about it. It just this, I just remember that in my head, and that was just it. And the Wadsworth Athenaeum was like my second home.
Yeah.
I used to go there all the time, like every weekend, and so much that everybody there knew me.
Did they close? Did they
The
close?
Wadsworth Athenaeum?
Yeah.
No, you mean probably during this virus and stuff?
No. I thought for some reason they had a school, didn't they?
I don't know. I don't think so.
All right.
But no, they've been expanding.
All right. Maybe I'm confusing it with another Athenaeum, but yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Wadsworth Athenaeum. They're famous because they were. Actually, it was them that I learned about Salvador Dali, and Salvador Dali was my first artist to just. I'm like, I want to be like this guy. This guy is awesome, and they have a couple pieces there, and they're known because it was there that Salvador Dali, I think, had his first show in the United States, and it was there that he uttered his famous phrase. I'm not a madman. I'm mad, but I'm not a madman, or something, stating his whole philosophy of how he goes into his thinking and how he creates his imagery. The psycho, I forget what it's called. Yeah. So I guess I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of
you did because when you mentioned and then you mentioned Dali, and the first thing that popped in my head was the story of him and his wife Gala.
Yeah.
As crazy as he was. I mean, there was a power couple of the fine arts. You applied straight out of high school to go to art school?
Yeah, I applied for. I initially wanted to go to Springfield College because they had. Actually, the other thing too, I grew up in a family that was big into computers. My dad was a professor at Eastern University. He taught computer science, and we had computers in like every room. So I wanted to mix computers with art, and Springfield College had a program called computer art, and I applied for that, and that was my initial what I wanted to do. And I got in there. I applied for Springfield College, Central, Connecticut State, UConn, and Salve. And my mom actually graduated from Salve with a nursing degree. And so she knew a lot of the people there, and we had gone there because she had she received an honorary degree or something, or I'm not sure what that's called, a life achievement thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always loved the water, and when I went to visit the campus, I was sold.
Yeah.
I was sold.
It's a great view.
Yeah, I was sold, and they initially weren't really handicap accessible, so I had to go meet with them, and they accepted my application, but they wanted to make sure that I was really interested in going there because they'd have to make a lot of changes and stuff for.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I can understand that. I mean, having gone to SMU, which is today the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, ADA was not a consideration when they built those places.
Yeah.
And that was only something that came up afterwards, probably later 70s, early 80s, when ADA became a consideration. Now, one of the reasons why I knew about you was because of Don Wilkinson's review of your work at the New Bedford Art Museum, and I'm curious as to how you got into that imagery of the I mean, nighttime scenes are difficult to begin with. And what attracted you to that?
To be honest, I just I like serenity and I like the quietness. It's ironic because I'm a huge music person too, and I've gone to lots and lots of concerts, and the music also kind of defines me, my life growing up. I have a collection of over 700 CDs plus in all genres. I could pull out any CD and tell you a story about it and how I got into that band, who influenced me, where some event that happened, and the show that I went. I could tell you a whole story about that whole, just from one CD.
Mm-hmm.
So music plays a huge part of it. So why am I saying that? Because I like loud music too. I
Yeah.
like loud concerts, but also um, I'm a reserved person. Like I will I'm not shy, but I am. But so why am I saying that? Because I just love the night, and I love the quietness and just the serene the serene quality of just being by the water and just in a reflection and being connected with nature. Um, I grew up in Ellington, so I was surrounded by nature. My mom is a huge influence on me because she was a big into nature and kind of taught me a lot about how important our environment is and nature. And we spent a lot of time camping too.
Mm-hmm.
So, that kind of plays into it too. Um, it kind of just evolved over time, and the colors, and I think the other part too is the light. I'm really fascinated by natural light and man-made light. Um, so in my studio location, and I've spent a lot of time up at night, just kind of just looking, just watching the changes of the light, and especially in the morning time when the sun is coming up, I'm just so fascinated by it that moment of when the sun comes up over the horizon, when it goes from these dark blues to light oranges to reds, and it's just speechless. It's just so speechless, and I love having a dark canvas. Like I usually start out with a dark canvas with my mixing of ultramarine blue with some alizarin crimson to create a nice quote unquote black, but it's not just black where there's nothing there. There are hints of some reds and blues that you can still see in there.
Right.
And then I love bringing the light out of that.
So you work from dark to light versus light to dark. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at my paintings, like one of the recent one I did of a boat, a fishing boat that's departing. It's really dark scenery. I just love the intricacy of if you look in really closely, you can just see the little bits of lights and just it becomes almost abstract.
Well, there's so many planes, the hulls, the wheelhouses, other vessels behind. Then you've got these intersecting angles of the booms and masts. And then those lights are like sort of interdispersed. You got the bigger lights for the work lights, and right?
The other thing to add into that too is when you look at some of the paintings I've done, you'll see a lot of little light globes all around. And the other thing that I was really into growing up is space and the universe and constellations. We used to go outside and look at a lot of the stars and the moon and stuff. And so I was big into NASA, space shuttle explorations, because I used to make a lot of models of that. So these paintings that I do kind of mimic constellations. Um, so I know I have a vision of where my work is going to evolve. What I want it to evolve to, but things always change.
Yeah.
You can't really control it, but I want to go from a realism of boats and the scenery that's around me like almost elevating up to stars and constellations and stuff. And um, I, I have a huge appreciation for abstract art. I see it as the epitome of art. Um, I haven't gotten there yet, but I think I'm hoping that my work will evolve to something like that where I start to understand it better. Um, so I see in my work that these little, when I zoom in, that it becomes something abstract, and um, I'm not sure I'm not sure about it yet, but I know I'm kind of rambling.
No, yeah, I you mean you
formalize it in my head, and that's that's why when you brought up Mark Rothko, I remember first learning about him, and I've never seen one of his pieces in person, and I can't imagine being able to see one, but I remember one of his pieces it's all black and just this red stripe and it's just emotional,
excuse me.
absolutely emotional.
Yeah, there are people who have wept looking at his work, and there's so little there. I think somebody once said there's just so much of so little there. You know,
Right.
now it's funny because you have these intentions when you go to the easel, and then, as you said, it takes on a life of its own. But you are keeping your eye on the horizon and thinking about going towards abstraction. I've just done the opposite, which is a whole other story, because it was about emotions. My figurative work was I would always deal with either the second before, the second of, or the second after an awful event occurred. Something that you couldn't get out of, like being between a rock and a hard place. And it became too much for me to bear emotionally. So I gave it up and I started painting abstract, and then found out that I tried to paint as cold-bloodedly as I could, and everybody kept saying, "Oh my God, it's so full of them." So it's funny what our intent is and what our viewers receive are quite interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing too is when I first moved, this is like my fifth apartment that I moved to, and um, I used to live in New Haven for about 3 years. That was just a respite between what I wanted to do and whatnot. So, and when I moved to New Bedford, like I said again, I love the water.
To Whaling
And
City. Way.
yeah, when I
Yeah.
first moved, just went out in my chair, just getting to know the area, and I just love that waterfront. It's just so alive and just so fascinating and just so much to see. It's just like a feast for the eyes. And I remember when I was driving through with my sister one time, she was just fascinated by all the masks and all the wires and all these angles that you could see from a distance, but you couldn't really see the boats. But it was just the horizon, and not the far horizon, but the intermediate area was just alive, And I used to go down there as the morning, midday. I would even go down there at 2 in the morning just to see what's going on. And I love this area. I just love this area so much, and it's hope I can stay here for a long time. But
Yeah.
it's just so I took I've taken hundreds and hundreds of photos of this area, and it's not just going around just whatever, but talking to people. And as I was painting just a lot of the scenery, and there's not a lot of people in my imagery, but I was like thinking to myself, it's great to paint these boats and whatnot, but it'd be interesting to talk to some of these fishermen that are down there working. And that added a whole other dimension to my work, just getting to know them. And there was a couple of guys, I was down there one time at Pier 3, I think it is. Um, and there was some guys, unloading boat and fixing some of the netting and whatnot. And I wanted to take pictures of them, but I didn't want them to be offended or anything. So I just went up and asked them, like, do you mind if I take some photos? And they were ecstatic. They were like, oh, yes, these guys love being photographed. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, so. Yeah. My stepdad was a fisherman. I have fond memories of being down there. The wharves were a completely different place. It was like something out of a movie where you're doing the intro, and the camera's doing that follow of the main character, and there's all these little vignettes going on all over the place. It was kind of magical in a lot of ways. It was awful for him. He was injured in a fierce storm when I was about 14, and broke his back in 3 places. He was lucky he wasn't killed or paralyzed, but his fishing days were over, and I still have memories of him looking on the bridge out on the water, and the look on his face was it was awful. It was really awful. I mean, the pain in his face was awful, and he was a small man. He was maybe about 5'2". And he had been a deep water diver, deep sea diver. I mean, he had a pretty interesting life, and I've heard stories of people who knew him who said he was unbelievably fierce. He wasn't stupid and he wasn't careless, but he was the guy you wanted either behind you or by your side in a desperate situation. And yeah, so there's a lot of great stories down there, and you capturing that down there as well is I feel that you're capturing it in a very, very different way than other people have attempted to do it, and it's kind of refreshing. Where do you see yourself? No, wait, I want to wait on that. Um, I'm going to ask you the question that all artists dread. With any one of the particular pieces of work, your more current pieces, what are you trying to say?
One more time.
Yeah, what if we look at a piece of your more contemporary work, the work that you've done more recently, what are you trying to say? Yeah.
I'm thinking of all the pieces that I have at the show right now, and I'm trying to pick out one of them that I have a stronger affinity to. What am I trying to say? My love for this area, sense of place. That's a term I talked about in my MFA
Thesis. Yeah.
thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, sense of place. I've been reading about that a lot, and I've written about it. And sometimes I understand it, sometimes I don't. But it's just all the places that I've lived at. I don't want to say documenting, but my love for that area where I live, and it was New Haven and here, and it wasn't until New Haven that I started thinking about my last apartment that I started thinking about that. And in New Haven, I lived in this small apartment beneath a church, next to a church, next to another church, right across from this the main train artery from Hartford to the New Haven terminal. And so the train was always going by, and then there was like a municipal barn past that. Then there was a big sky with a lot of power lines, but I did have a big sky to view. So I spent a lot of time just watching the changing of light and the changing of seasons and the changing of the clouds and storms and whatnot. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I just love the change. I love the nature, and I love watching the change of the lighting. A lot of my pieces are dark, but my love for lighting, and some pieces have a full, color palette.
Spectrum,
But
yeah.
I'm pretty limited with just a lot of dark blues and a lot of dark blues and reds and whatnot. But I guess my main thing is just I love nature and I love our environment. So I guess a part of it is there's a subconscious that's coming through my work that I'm not really thinking about or not really concentrating on, but I'm just kind of letting it happen. Is this in a group, I am not going to be the outspoken one. I know that, and there's nothing wrong with that. In a situation like this where I have to talk about myself, or I will speak up, but I am reserved. I am introvert. So I guess that's part of my work that's showing through. I'm not sure if that's what I'm trying to tell other people. There's a band called No Doubt that I thought it was really fascinating about how they talked about their work, that they said they don't do their music for their fans. They do the music for themselves. But the music is, they're happy to share with their fans. So I'm not sure if I'm doing my work for everybody else. I'm doing it for me. But I love that everybody loves what I'm doing. I don't know if that sounds selfish or not, but...
No, it doesn't. You're hitting a nerve. You're hitting a...
yeah, and I love that because everybody's going to take your work in a different way. Some people are going to love it, and some people are not going to love it. So that's fine. You're going to have critics. You're going to have people that don't accept your work. I've submitted my work to a lot of places, and some I have a list of. I keep all the denials because I think it's important to keep those too.
Yeah.
It's important to keep your bad work too. I think it is. From it too.
I don't. Do you paint over your bad stuff?
I didn't used to, but there are some pieces I painted over, but I do keep a lot of my bad stuff too. But when space becomes a problem, then you have to deal with that.
Yeah, I had a couple of friends ask me why don't I paint over work, and I said, well, I don't do it because it's a reminder. It makes me, hopefully it makes me more humble. Not that I'm a egomaniac or anything, but it keeps me humble. And the other thing too is that sometimes the work that I hate, after months and months and months, becomes the work that I love. The work that I say to myself, why didn't I ever see this? You know?
Yeah, it's great when you have a piece that's tucked away in your studio somewhere that you might not like, and someday you just glance at it and like, oh, there's something, that there's that moment where you see something in it that you love that you can use somewhere, so.
Yeah. Where are you going to go from here, do you think, as an artist?
I just keep painting every day. I'm reading a book that on landscape painting, and there's a question that always pops in my head is every time I sit down on my canvas or sit down on my easel, why am I here? Why am I sitting down on my canvas? Am I painting to learn something new? Am I painting to add to my portfolio? So essentially, I'm just going to keep working. I really would love to, all the stuff that a lot of artists want to do. They want to get into a gallery. They want to teach. I love to teach. That's why I mostly came out here to get my MFA. So that's one of my main goals is to teach. So, but I graduated in 2014, and it's been a couple of years now. But I think I've done pretty good since then. I've had a lot of shows and stuff, and I'm really thankful for being in this area of New Bedford because I think it's helped me a lot. And I wasn't really planning on getting my MFA, but I think it was a smart choice because I met a lot of actually Anthony Fisher, who teaches there at the school.
Yeah,
I've known him since I was 18. He taught at Salve, and So that was one of the reasons why I came out here too. But it's added to my career a lot because I initially, when I got out of Salve, I went right into the commercial art field. I did a lot of digital artwork for education and games and stuff. And after getting let go after 2 jobs, I decided, I wanted to do a little freelancing, and then I figured I'd want to try to get to teaching. So that's one of my main goals I'd love to teach.
Yeah.
I did a little teaching at the school, and I just loved it.
I know how you feel. That's like if I had a choice between, it sounds crazy, between painting or teaching, if I could only do one, as crazy as it may sound, I'd rather teach for some reason. But the frustration of teaching is you do so much learning, and then you have nothing to apply that learning to. I think a lot of art instructors are better artists because they're instructors, and they're thinking out loud with their students, and I know I have a lot to be thankful for with my instructors. So this creative community has been good for you, to you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, this whole area, I know Ryan McPhee, a lot of the artists over there on William Street are just, and this was my first living somewhere where the city actually shows how important the art field is. I looked into the city before I moved here, and there was some article that said it was like the 7th most artists
Most artistic place, yeah.
in the United States, and I thought that was pretty cool. And when I first came here, there was it was in August 2012. They had the 50s night, which was like, it was just awesome to see a city doing stuff, community stuff, in particular the arts. And then they had the AHA night, and I remember meeting, I forget his first name. There was a bunch of artists down and right in front of my building.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just selling their artwork, and it was just really cool.
Yeah.
Just really cool.
Yeah.
And just having the galleries open, and I met a lot of Chuck and his wife at Gallery X.
Yeah.
Then the museum, it was just awesome to have a show there. That was huge plus for my resume. It just keeps going. It just keeps going, and it's gotten better over the years. I've seen it just getting better in this area here. So.
Yeah. What was your impression? Not to put you in a spot, because I know the both of you, but what was your impression of Don's critique of your work, or review of your work?
Oh, it was awesome.
I was impressed. Yeah.
For writing about twice. He's
Yeah.
about me twice.
Yeah.
It's very cool. He's a very cool guy.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. If one of those Barbara Walters questions, if you had a magic wand and you only had one wish, what would that one wish be that you'd like to see granted?
Oh, easy. For the world to show more importance to arts. For arts, everybody to show a little bit more appreciation to arts.
Yeah.
The arts can save the world. That's what I believe.
You really think it should begin in the schools?
Oh, heck yeah. Are you kidding me? I can't imagine growing up in a school with no arts, no music.
And you think we have enough in the schools, or do we need more?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a.
There's some. I can't understand how the budget for the what is it, that endowments, the endowment arts, is so low.
Yeah.
So low. It's just disgraceful.
It is. It is. And I got a little crass about my opinion on art educators, because when I was working in the public school system, that was what I call the beginning of the end. There were no more art rooms. There were the art teachers who would look like bag ladies with their shopping carts. They were itinerant teachers. they were always taking away from the arts because it was considered non-essential. So a friend of mine I went to the University of Miami with, his wife Lourdes is a teacher at the Sheridan Middle School in a interesting neighborhood. That's cool. It's a
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know
It's
what
okay. It's a podcast. The things are gonna happen. No barking dogs so far. And No, not a problem. So I went down there to visit, and I visited her school. And the moment I walked in the door, I was thrown on the floor. It was like, oh my God, this is middle school. The art program there was absolutely phenomenal, and the art instruction gave these kids something that nobody and no other subject could give them. It gave them a voice, and it was absolutely unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable. I'm going to wrap this up, Roy. It was great to have met you.
Yeah.
You are now you are the first official artist Skype podcast. We did a Skype podcast, the first one for a series that we're doing called The Practice of Art. It's to help artists get information that they need to be better business people, which is sadly lacking in art education.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me
Yeah.
started. That's it's great to go through schooling and everything, but it's like at the end, it's like rushed at the end, and it's like, okay, I have all this education. What do I do with it?
Where do I go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially MFA was the worst part, because MFA is so different from BFA. And then you're like bonded together with your classmates, and it's probably the most incredible part of your entire life. And then you got to go. You got to
Yeah.
leave. Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad. Well, Roy, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to I'll let you know when this is going to be aired or dropped, and hope to meet you in person soon, as soon as this whole craziness is over with.
Right. Yeah.
And do keep in touch if there's anything interesting that we need to know, that the South Coast Artists Index needs to know about you. Please let us know, because we're trying to expand, and we're trying to get money coming in to help us create this collective digital archive. And part of it is the podcasting, and the other part is the database that has been vexing the crap out of me. Hoping that my nephew can fix it so that we can finally get the yellow pages for the living artists, for the contemporary artists. And then we'll also be able to have the historical artists, where if you've got information on anybody that you know of from this area, or that was associated by in some way, we can resurrect those souls and show their work and tell their story, because that's what it's all about. Thanks so much, Roy. Have a great day. I'm glad to have met you.
Yeah, same here.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
You're listening to the South Coast Artist Index, conversations with the creative community's visual, performing, and literary artists.